Is that you?
That's me. I don't. Okay, there you are.
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing all right. How are you?
I'm good. Behind me is class. You're moving your camera all around. You kind of
Howdy.
howdy. I don't. You may not see everybody. I'll do the same to you here. You'll have that same kind of weirdness. There's people. If you guys, yeah, and then there's oops, oops. I'm not going to be able to do that. That's apparent. Oh, there you are. Well, you look dapper and early morning. Your time is different for than obviously us. Let's see here. All right. Now go into a convenience store. So, Mr. Lockhart, this is Christopher Lockhart. Let me see if I can get the sound up here.
It's right in the middle. You pointed at the
At that.
sound system over there.
Can you talk, Chris?
Hello.
All right. It's Mr. Lockhart. He works for William Morris Endeavor as a story editor. I'm going to ask you to describe what you do in a second, Chris. And then he also produces, and he produced The Collection, and a remarkable, wonderful documentary called Most Valuable Players that Oprah loved. And if you get Oprah on your side, you're doing something right. And he's got other things in development, and he's got famous clients. So will you tell us a little bit about what you do? The class here is made up of sophomores, juniors, and senior undergrads in filmmaking. This is the business inside the film business class. So we're talking about how to break into screenwriting, directing, producing, and other areas, animating, editing, cinematography. But you know, where some of what you can talk about that would be really useful for them is how they can determine whether or not they've got a good screenplay to shoot and whether or not something's worthy of producing and how they can make inroads into that famous town. So I'll shut up and let you talk.
So you want me to start with what I do?
Yeah, why don't you do that?
All right. So I work at William Morris Endeavor, WME, as it is really known as. It is a newer agency combined from two other agencies. The William Morris Agency was a talent agency that was established in the late 1800s in New York City. And through the years, its responsibility is to represent artists in the business deal. Make sure that the artist doesn't get screwed when it comes to making a deal. And then through the years, agencies have grown, and now really talent agencies are more than just representing talent. Talent agencies are really about finding and creating opportunities for talent.
And that includes the directors and producers and writers as well.
Absolutely. In fact, there's an agency out here called UTA, United Talent Agency, and they just announced yesterday that they're opening a fine arts division. So they will now be representing photographers and sculptors and painters, to try to find more opportunities for them and extend their brands. And so in 2009, William Morris merged with a newer agency called the Endeavor Agency. Endeavor was started back in the 90s by Patrick Weitzel and Ari Emanuel. And some of you might kind of know Ari Emanuel. First of all, his brother was the chief of staff to Obama, and he's now the mayor of Chicago, Rahm Emanuel. But Ari Emanuel has been sort of immortalized in the TV show Entourage because the Jeremy Piven character, Ari Gold, is loosely based on Ari Emanuel. So this new agency was born, WME, and it's pretty ahead of its time. In fact, last year we acquired IMG, which is the world's largest sports agency. We bought them for $2.4 billion. So now WME is the world's largest talent agency. We represent everybody from Broadway actors to sports figures, and it's a pretty large company now. We think we've got close to maybe 5,000 employees around the world. So my function there as story editor is very small, and I work with about a dozen actors, and my job is basically to find their next project. There's so many scripts out there, books, magazines, graphic novels, old movies, old TV shows. There's sort of a wealth, a large well to draw from to find potential film projects for clients. And so my job is sort of like a miner. I have to go out and try to, pan for gold, try to find projects. And so some of the people I work with, I've been working with Steve Martin and Richard Gere for many years, Denzel Washington since 1998. I work with Christian Bale, Hugh Jackman, Matt Damon, Ben Affleck, Jake Gyllenhaal.
Nobody we'd know?
Nobody. Joaquin Phoenix. I just started working with a new actor named Joel Kinnaman. He just played RoboCop in that failed remake, but you'll be seeing his name all around the place because in a short time they're going to announce that he's replacing a big actor in a very big film. So you'll hear more about him. I work with Rachel McAdams also. She's been sort of pigeonholed in those romance films like The Notebook, but you'll be seeing her next in True Detective Season 2,
wow,
which is a completely different storyline than was featured in the first season. And so I have to read a lot of scripts. I have to determine if these scripts are appropriate for our clients. I will make recommendations if I think something needs to be fixed, if it doesn't seem like it's going to fit the client perfectly. Maybe we'll do rewrites. I'll track all the changes through the rewrite process. So last year I had films like Inherent Vice, Nightcrawler, The Equalizer, were projects that I found and worked on through the development process for my clients. So that's pretty much it. I've been doing it for a long time. I started doing this particular line of work in 1998. Over the years, I've worked with Julia Roberts, Michelle Pfeiffer, Sharon Stone, Jennifer Lopez, Mel Gibson was a very big client of mine for many years. Robert Downey Jr., Liam Neeson. In fact, I found Taken for Liam Neeson. And it was called Kidnapped when I originally found the script. And I spoke to the producers, and they wanted to put Mel Gibson in the movie. And I said, well, Mel's already done this movie. It was called Ransom, and it was much more of an A-list movie rather than this, which is much more of a B movie. So we eventually managed to cajole the producers into hiring Liam Neeson. And it's really relaunched his career. He's not with us anymore. He went to another agency, but he went to another agency just before Taken had happened, and maybe we wouldn't have been so keen to let him go had Taken already happened.
right.
But that's the way it goes. Agencies make 10% off of what clients make. So if a client's in a very big film and he's getting a lot of a back end on that movie, it can be very lucrative for the agency. But believe it or not, the big stars don't really bring in the big money for agencies. They just bring in sort of the brand value. It's nice for an agency to say, yeah, we work with Denzel Washington. But the truth is, the real money makers for agencies are television packages, like putting together TV shows is where an agency really makes its money. Like the agency that I work with now packaged Seinfeld. And so that show over the years has made hundreds of millions of dollars for our talent agency. I used to work at a talent agency called ICM, and they packaged Friends and The Simpsons. And it's the same thing. Those shows have made that agency hundreds of millions of dollars. So it's starting to change a little bit. TV deals aren't quite as lucrative as they used to be, which is why our agency is expanding into other realms. We actually look to sign YouTube stars now. So, you know, rather than signing a great big movie star, our agency will sign a YouTube personality if they have more than 1 million followers. But you got to have more than 1 million followers. That's the thing. You know, we're not interested in you. We're interested in you and who else you bring to the table. And that's probably one of the most important things when it comes time to look for a rep, whether it be a manager or an agent. It's not just your script or your film, because every friggin' filmmaker on the planet has a movie or a screenplay. That doesn't set you apart from anybody. What, you think your script's going to be better than everybody else's? Well, yeah, there's hundreds of thousands of screenplays circulating in town at any one time. For you to think your screenplay is the best, it's probably a little egotistical. It doesn't mean that it can't be true, but it's probably not true. Odds are it's probably not true. So, you know, you need to bring other things to the table as well. And if that's a fan base, that's a lot to bring, because the agency can then, they can sell you. So let's say that you're a YouTube personality and, I don't know, Firestone is looking for somebody to sell their tires. Our agency can say, hey, you know, use this guy. He's got a young audience. He's got, you know, 5 million followers on Instagram. And now that makes you that much more attractive, you know, because of your followers. So our agency is a very big agency, and so we don't really hire, or I should say hire, we don't sign new talent, really. You know, if you sort of like have just stepped off the boat from Wisconsin and you're like, I want a big agent. Yeah, I'm sure you do want a big agent. But you have to have done big things to have a big agent. So if you've done small things or you've done very little, then you have to start with smaller agencies and then you work your way up. So that's just sort of, that's kind of the hierarchy. And
no, that's excellent. I appreciate you addressing those things. This is going to be interesting because I can hear me, I think, in your computer. I don't know if I should turn mine down too, or will that affect the recording? Anyone know?
Maybe if he had try turning it down.
I can try turning mine down. Anyway, did you?
You know something? You want me to maybe try putting on like a headset with like a microphone, and then that might cut back your.
Yeah, they said you could do that. And while you're doing that, one of the questions that I would have for you is you know, you look for these projects. What is the criterion that you evaluate a good screenplay or a good project by, that you would take to, I mean, one of your different clients?
All right, I'm just going to go cross over to the room and get that thing. I'll be right back.
That's great. Thank you. So, you have any questions based on what he said so far? Because if you do, you know, we'll have you ask him, and I want to save, you know, a good time for questions, huh? I don't mean that for you to ask me now, but I mean, you have questions for me?
I have a question about the TV packaging.
Okay, well, good. Keep these. What we'll do is we'll let him talk a little bit more, and then we'll take some questions, and we'll let him talk some more, because we really want him to answer your questions. That would be awesome. What you're looking at right now is appears to be
hopefully
a leather.
It wasn't like a crotch shot or something.
No, not of you, but it looked like a leather chair or sofa, or
All right, so I don't know if this is
I'm
going to
sure
work.
it's not an IKEA vinyl.
No, definitely not.
I would have an IKEA vinyl.
Okay, so I can hear you very nicely. Can you hear me?
Yeah, and you look gorgeous.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I feel like a
You're-
telephone operator.
Yeah, you know, you could look that way, or a co-pilot in an airplane.
Take
But
off.
if you're putting the computer on your lap, as you breathe and move, your image gets distorted.
Well, don't just give me a chance to settle down. Just all right, give me a second.
All right, have some yogurt and be calm.
Come on, what do you want? It's like 7:30 in the morning.
I
here.
know. Okay. Well.
It's going to be 85 degrees today.
Well, rub it in. It's like 20 here. No, I think it's 30 today, right? Okay. So
Sucks to be you. Sucks to be you.
not really. I kind of like being me, but anyway, it sucks to be where I am. No, that's not true either, because I'm right here. Anyway, so I had asked you a question about criterion for selection of screenplays and/or projects for your important clients, so that our listeners and students can kind of go, okay, you know, how do I, when I'm writing or putting together a project, what bullet points do I have to keep in mind if there is such a thing?
Well, you know, I think that something that's very important that I always look for in a script, because I am looking for projects for actors. So for me, the most important element is finding a good role. And so what defines a good role? What defines a good role is you have a character who's active, who has something to do. I think what you'd be surprised about is in the majority of scripts I read from new writers is that the script doesn't give the character anything to do. The character sort of meanders through the whole script. The thing that makes a screenplay good, the reason that you turn a page over and over again, is because of expectations and anticipation. And so if you look at a script like Taken, it's a very simple story, but it's at its root, it's about a father who sets out to save his daughter, to find and save his daughter. And that's sort of the problem that Liam Neeson has in that movie. His daughter's been kidnapped, and the way to solve that problem is he has to find her and save her. And so it's really about giving the character a big problem to solve, and then the movie becomes about him going out to solve that problem. And most new scripts don't give the character a problem to solve. Oh, they sort of think that they do, but they really don't, and it's not something that's has enough heft to carry a screenplay. It's often internal rather than external. And usually by midpoint, it's almost impossible to even get through the script because it's so damn boring. So I just read 2 scripts like that yesterday, as a matter of fact. I was like, ugh. Like, you know, everybody goes to the movies, and yet the way movies work, if it's done well, all the strings are invisible. So I think what happens is that people who say, oh, I can do that, it's so easy, and then they go ahead and they do it, and they do a bad job. So that's really what I'm looking for, is a character who has an interesting problem to solve, and then the way he goes about solving that problem becomes the movie, and the way he goes about it is interesting. And then hopefully there's some sort of emotional component to this journey, and hopefully the story is important enough that the character changes somehow as well. And that's an Aristotelian theory, but it goes back to the whole concept. If your story is meaningful and important, then your protagonist changes as a result. The characters don't always change, but like Forrest Gump doesn't really change all that much, but yet he brings about change in the characters around him. So sort of one way or the other. So those are sort of some things that I look for. But to be honest, I don't really. I just sort of go in without any expectations, and then I just allow the screenplay to create those for me. And then when I'm done with the screenplay, I reflect back on that experience and then make my judgment call that way. So I really don't go in with a checklist of things. Maybe subliminally they're in there somewhere, but it's really about the experience first and foremost. I allow the writer to sort of take me to where he wants to take me. And if that journey is emotional and memorable and affecting, then it might be something to consider. But, you know, often I'll read a script that's amazing, but it's not right for my clients. And
another consideration, sure.
Yeah, so, you know, just because it's a great script doesn't mean that any of my people are going to be in it.
Just to follow up, and then I'm going to open it up for the students to ask. When, for example, Denzel Washington, you do something like The Equalizer. You say it's a good role, and the components I assume that you just described are in the script. The screenplays that you're reading, my guess are probably, because of where you are and your position in the company and things like that, are a cut above most of the first-time screenwriters and the people who are trying to work their way up a ladder. You're reading some of the probably best writers in the world.
Yeah, because ultimately the truth is that if you want somebody like Christian Bale or Denzel Washington in your movie needs to most likely already be financed. And you need to be making an offer to the client. You need to be saying, hey, we want Denzel to star in this movie, and we're going to pay him $20 million to star in it, and we'd like you to read the script. And for you to say that, you need to have your financing in place already, because you can't waste our time with, well, I'm going to try to raise some money on Kickstarter, and so can Denzel read this script right now? Yeah, that's not the way we play. So, so for the most part, scripts are coming from high, exalted places. But that being said, I did read these 2 scripts yesterday that were pretty awful, and I found that afterward when I spoke to the agent who asked me to read them, that they were from like a friend of a friend. So I was reading them more sort of for a general purpose to see if any of our clients would be right for this script. Sometimes scripts come to me directly. So a studio will say, we want Denzel Washington to star in this movie. So it's not like I even have to try to cast it. I just have to read it and determine if it's something that Denzel will do or not do. And by the way, even if I say this is something that we will consider, it doesn't mean that Denzel will ever do it, because there's so many factors that can get in the way. It may not fit in his schedule, like maybe they want to start shooting in the spring and Denzel has something else planned for the spring. Maybe he doesn't like the director. Maybe he doesn't like the co-star. Maybe he doesn't like where they're going to shoot it. There could be many, many factors that could prevent an actor from being in a film. So ultimately, I don't make that final decision. The client makes the final decision. My job is merely to present the opportunities to the client and what the pros and the cons of each one might be.
Awesome. I appreciate it. I'd like to open it up to the students, but thanks for the answer. So if somebody's got a question, speak loudly if you want, and you want to be seen on where Chris can see you, you'll need to kind of come over and stand where he might be able to see. So who's first? Yeah?
I got a pretty big expanse. I can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 students and you. That's a lot of people.
Yes, well, if you want to be seen, do be seen. And this is being recorded, so those who are seen right now, if you're okay with it being recorded, put your hand up. And that way we all know that you're good with that. Because this may make it to YouTube, and we may get 1 million followers, and then you're going to come to us at UWM and go, hey, you got 1 million followers. What, talking to me?
No. Hopefully not on YouTube, because I want to because I'm going to share stuff today that's sort of confidential.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, you know,
Well, we may have to edit some of that.
I have to edit. Yeah. Okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
no, but go ahead. You share those secrets. Okay, so who's first with the question? Jump in. I don't want to waste time.
You've worked in the industry since '98. You said. How do you think the atmosphere of the industry in general has changed?
And say your name.
I'm Ben.
Thanks, Ben. You know, it's changing because of digital, and it's changing because of the internet, and those are really the big X factors right now. Well,
Oh, wow.
okay.
Oh, it's staggering for a bit.
It's censoring itself.
Huh?
It's censoring itself. It's making a joke.
Oh,
We know
yeah.
too much.
You're frozen. Are you still there? I don't. No, there we lost it. Okay, so let's see if we can get it back.
Shut the door.
Hi, how are you? Where is where's the camera? I mean, it says no camera right now. There we go. Let's see. What's going on? Wow. See if we can. Yay! All right.
I thought I'd never see you again.
Yeah, well, not so lucky.
All right, so let's pick up where we left off. Where were we?
Ben was asking a question about the change between what you saw in the 90s and today, and you were talking about the change in digital.
Yeah, I think that's really the big change. The death of DVD, which was a huge moneymaker for the industry, and the birth of the internet, which is not yet a big moneymaker for the industry because the industry is still struggling with ways to monetize it. And right now, the way to monetize it seems to be plucking these internet stars and then finding ways to mine their brand. Rex knows the story about Camp Dakota, which is a film that you can now see on Netflix. And at the agency, there was a guy that had like an office next to mine. He had some kind of deal with the agency. I never really asked what it was all about. But he raised like $250,000 to make a film. And his goal was to cast it with internet stars. So he found 3 internet stars, each one that had like more than 2 million followers. And they got together. He pitched the idea, they wrote the movie, they shot the movie in a short amount of time. They found some online platform in which to distribute it where people would pay anywhere from, I think, $14 to $19 to buy the movie. I think the extra fee was you could actually buy the extras like you would get on a DVD. And the movie did amazing business as they mostly marketed it to those fans. And one of the women, Grace Helberg, was then signed by our agency, and now she's going to have a late night talk show next season, and whammo. So that's sort of the way the agency works. So really, it's that birth of the internet, but also the sense of digital, because now anybody can make a movie. You know, you can make a movie on your phone, as well. And so there's a lot of people that are in the game now. And there's a lot more places to look for talent. So it's a great time if you're talent, but it's also hard because the field is so much broader. But there are more opportunities. You know, when Rex and I were, you know, maybe not your age, but younger than you, there were only 4 or 5 TV channels. You know, I grew up in New York City. And, you know, we had Channel 2, Channel 4, Channel 5, Channel 7, Channel 9, Channel 13, which was the PBS channel. Oh, and Channel 11. So that's like 5 or 6 channels. And that's it. Now there's hundreds and hundreds of channels all looking for content. So there are a lot more opportunities as well. Maybe not as much money to be made, but still plenty of money to be made. So I think that's how it's changed. You know, even in the amount of time that I've been in the business, we've seen the birth of reality TV. You know, reality TV really sort of, it's been around since the 50s, but it really became popular with MTV's The Real World, which was in the 90s, and then eventually from there it just became this proliferation of stuff, and that creates more opportunities as well. So I think the big difference is more opportunities, and that's a good thing.
All right. Excellent. Who else? Jump in. Go.
I had a question. Hi, my name is Alex. Nice to meet you.
Hey, Alex.
You mentioned on how selling off like TV packages, they're not as lucrative as they used to be. Is it partly because of the rise of not only YouTube but online providers like Netflix and Hulu and Amazon will get original content? I know Netflix does not like to release viewership numbers for their shows. Like, oh, take our word for it, it's valuable. Is it because of Netflix's stance on not releasing viewership numbers that it's hard to tell the value of a show or the value of one's talent in order to sign them on or to sell off syndication rights overseas territories?
Well, let me first explain very briefly, from at least what I understand, how an agency makes money off of a TV package. The idea of a TV package is that the agency sort of, it's like a garden, and it puts together all the elements for the TV show. So, for example, it might represent the producer of the show. It might represent the writers of the show, the creators. It might also represent a couple of the stars of the show, where they put enough talent together to create a package that they can then sell to the studios. And the way the agency profits off of that is it collects roughly 3% of the production budget of the show. So if you look at a show like, let's say, The Big Bang Theory, where those actors are getting paid a lot of money, and which means that the budget for each show must be, pretty hefty. Let's say something like Friends, probably in that last season where each of them were getting paid $1 million per episode. It was, probably the budget for each show was probably close to, $10 million. And so the agency would collect 3% of that. And that's, 21, 22 episodes. But something that's happening now is that the networks don't order as many shows as they used to. And so we see maybe there's only 10 shows a season, which then means that the agency is collecting half of what it would be collecting if it had taken, if the show had been picked up for 21 or 22 seasons. Back in the 50s, when they did I Love Lucy, they did almost 30 shows a season. And so so that's probably one of the reasons that there's not as much money. Also, too, they're not. Deals are just tougher now, and because nobody's making as much money as they used to be. Even with films, you don't see as many actors making $20 million a movie anymore. They're making maybe $10 million a movie, and then they're getting some creative back end. But that's just because. So they say that overall, the movies aren't making the kind of money, or the movie industry isn't making the kind of money that it was making way back when. In terms of Netflix, I'm not really sure how Netflix works. I mean, they're producing their own stuff. I would have to assume that the deals are the same in terms of 3%. In terms of the residuals, not really residuals, but the back end on things in terms of reruns and stuff for licensing deals. I don't know how that works yet with Netflix, because we haven't seen anything yet put into syndication. A show like The Big Bang Theory is going to make that agency a lot of money. So there really are sort of a large number of factors that are sort of chiseling away at that. Reality TV, by the way, is another perfect example as to why agencies aren't making the kind of money in TV that they used to make. Yes, the agencies will package, and the agencies will still get 3%, but what do you think the production budget of a reality show is? It's minimal. So, and that's where a lot of that lost commission is going. Also, too, if an agency doesn't package the show but they put people in it, then the agency gets 10%. So let's say that the agency represents some reality stars, and they're putting those reality stars in these shows that they didn't package, but they're just putting them in shows. Those reality stars are not getting $1 million an episode. They're getting very, very little. And so the 10% of that is really very little money. The key is to build a brand around the reality star. Have the reality star become the Revlon girl, or have him write books, or do lecture tours. I mean, that's the way to try to expand it, or get the reality star eventually to transition into a sitcom. But so those are things that are really hurting. Reality shows have absolutely put a big dent in that.
Chris, can I follow up? And then another question. I think that was great. It makes sense, given what you've said in terms of the agents and commissions and the salaries of people, that for any one of the listeners here, the goal seems to be, become a household name, extend your network, your social networking value, get as many followers as you can, have a personal brand that's unique enough that, you stand out from the crowd, and then do whatever you can to promote, have great content, or provide great value in the service or work that you offer, and if you have kind of all those ducks in a row, then an agency such as yours might be inclined to go, yeah, we can make money with this person, and they will then bring them on, at least with the idea that we'll see how it goes, and then test the waters, and if they're making money, they keep them, and if they're not, they cut them loose. I mean, it's all dollars and cents and visibility and awareness. I mean, it's they want your agency wants it as easy as pie, I imagine.
Well,
not that they don't work.
The agency's going to do a lot of work,
yeah.
And the agency doesn't build. The agency doesn't build talent.
Right. Talent
comes to us built, and then we take the talent to the very next level. That doesn't mean that we don't take new people. For instance, if any of these students, let's say, won the Nickel Fellowship, which is a screenwriting fellowship open to any amateur writer who's not made more than, I think, $25,000 as a screenwriter, you can enter your screenplay into that, and if you win a fellowship wherein you'll have to write another screenplay, but you're paid about $30,000, and that fellowship gets a lot of ink in town, and in a sense, that sort of sets you on fire in a good way, and it gives you heat. And so you might end up getting an agent or a manager as a result of that. You don't have to have 2 million followers on YouTube. So there are other ways to try to catch fire and come to the agency with a little bit of heat.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you. Other questions? Yes, Steve.
Hi, my name is Steven. Thank you for your expertise today. I was wondering, knowing what they deliver, do the big stars still have to audition, or do they get the role automatically if chosen?
Sometimes they might audition. I don't think anybody that I've worked with over the years has ever auditioned that I can remember. Typically, the role comes to them. Producers are banging down Denzel Washington's door for him to star in a movie. So, but you know, I mean, it's not unusual. In the old days, they would have their big stars sort of read with each other on film to see if there was any kind of chemistry. And but for the most part, the people that I work with that I can recall are not auditioning. No, that doesn't mean that they haven't over the years prior to. But just about everything that we do is stuff that has been offered them. If there were a role that they really wanted, that the studio or the producer didn't think the client was right for it, then the client might go ahead and meet with the director or the producer of the studio and read for the part. It's possible, but for the most part, with people I work with, no.
Awesome. Thank you. Before you ask your question, we've got maybe a half hour or 35 minutes left if you're good with that, Chris. Okay, cool. And maybe even 40 minutes if you're good with that. But here's the question, or here's the statement I want to make. Try as much to make sure that the questions that you ask, if I were in this position, help serve you in getting where you want to go in your goals and your dreams. Does that make sense? You know, so that they're practical. So if Chris can give you some practical, steer you in a practical way, that would be helpful. That was an excellent question, but you or I probably won't be auditioning Denzel Washington. So I don't mean to pick on you, but I'm just it's great because it's good to know. And it was a good question. Okay. Yeah, Ryan.
So just out of curiosity, a lot of people, there's been a lot of talk because of kind of the rise of digital video that, like, there's a lot of places kind of vying to become kind of that third big film city, I think, kind of like stands out from the rest. I mean, right now we have New York and LA, and I mean, some people would argue Chicago's already that third place. Do you see any places that in the industry that are really kind of like rising to the top of the pile right now?
Well, you know, I think that there's a lot of shooting that's done in Vancouver because it can double for a lot of cities and the tax breaks, and Georgia is becoming a very popular place to shoot. It's a very sort of friendly state. They have a lot of stuff ready to go. When I shot a movie in Atlanta, and it was, I guess, off-season hiatus for The Walking Dead, which I guess shot there, and just probably 90% of our crew was all The Walking Dead crew. North Carolina, that seemed to be rising. So yeah, you know, I think that the sort of unfriendly tax breaks here in Los Angeles have made it not necessarily a hospitable place to film. Yes, of course, the majority of the industry is here, all the big movie studios are here. But that's also sort of the nerve center. So a lot of the brains of the industry are here, but you know, the limbs and the digits are out elsewhere making films. So yeah, you know, I see a lot of places rising, and in 30 years, I think Hollywood will be more symbolic of the film industry. And again, there still needs to be a home, you know, there needs to be a dugout where everybody goes to talk and you know, conspire. But ultimately, the film business is going all over the place. So it's mostly where the filmmakers are. So it could be Wisconsin.
And it should be Wisconsin. One of the things that I've noticed through the years, and I just want to make this comment, is that you know, everybody used to funnel into Hollywood or New York, and from Hollywood, if you got some success, then you would be taken elsewhere. You might go to Texas to shoot, you might go to Louisiana to shoot, you might go to Bulgaria to shoot, you know, but you went with the crew. With the rise of incentives, one of the things that has happened is that the states, in order to give you money back, you have to use so many state employees now, and you need to try and develop jobs in the economy. And so what happens is that you know, as a producer, you go in and you hire a lot of local people who may or may not have the experience, and that's all. But the point is that it's now harder for that nomadic filmmaker who would have been in LA going to other places to go other places, because your jobs are being taken from those people who would be in Atlanta or in Louisiana or in Bulgaria or in Vancouver. So it's kind of carved the film industry up, and it's making local areas develop talent, both in front of and behind camera, which at one time was more centralized in LA.
Yeah, yeah, and you know, look, there's I say share the pie.
Indeed.
You know?
All right, next question. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Michael.
Hey, Mike.
If I may ask, how did you come to work for the agency?
Well, you know, I've been I got out of graduate school, and I decided to go west. I went to NYU's film school, and I studied dramatic writing, and I was like, okay, I'm going to go west. I'm going to be a screenwriter. And I started writing with a partner, somebody that I actually went to school with, who moved out. And we wrote for 10 years. And, you know, sort of it was ups and downs. I think, like, my worst year as a screenwriter, I made $11,000. You know, but there were some very good years, too. But in 98, actually in 97, my writing partner left LA with his wife for personal reasons. And this was just before sort of the internet. You know, it was just before, you know, it's like, I think I had a computer, but it was like given to me by somebody. It had like, you know, 1 gigabyte of like memory. You had like AOL. You remember with the ding ding, you remember, you know, like you used to get online, it would take like, everything was dial up. And, so it wasn't sort of commonplace that you'd be writing online. Like today, it could be really easy. You know, I could be Skyping with my partner, and we could be writing that way. But so I basically ended up working alone, and I hated it. And I my first job as a writer by myself was for a production company on the Sony lot, and you know, I'd go there all the time, and it was such a horrible, circuitous experience. The producers and the development executives just didn't have their act together. And then just a whole bunch of other personal things, like my brother lived out here with his family, and he moved away, and I had to put my cat to sleep, and I just broken up with a girlfriend. You know, it was just sort of like, it was like the perfect storm of crap. And I really didn't know what it was that I wanted to do. I was very unhappy writing. I'd actually written a musical review, oddly enough, that was that had been performed for well over a year at a casino, and the producer said, you know, we're going to be closing the show. You never saw it. Why don't you come out to see it? I was like, fine, I'll come out to see it. So, you know, I drive the 6 hours to go to the casino to see it, and I get to the box office, and my name's not on the list. I have to buy a ticket. And I was like, ugh, this is just the worst. I was like, I've had it with this crap, you know? I was like, it sucks being a writer. And so I went back home, and there were like 27 phone messages on my, this was before we had voicemail. And they were all from ICM. And Ed Lamato, who was the co-president and a very famous talent agent who had discovered talent like Mel Gibson and discovered Michelle Pfeiffer, discovered Ed Norton, and Richard Gere. He was looking for somebody to help him wrangle in all of these scripts and sort of serve as another pair of eyes to him, as his consigliere, as his creative consigliere. And his name, my name, had come to him through a mutual acquaintance that we knew. And so I went in to interview, and he was very intimidating, and I didn't like the idea of working at an agency, and I didn't want to wear a tie. And but I was at such a crossroads in my life that I said, you know, I'll give it a shot. If I don't like it, I'll quit. And the very first day at the agency, they just like threw me into an office. They said, there's your computer. Here's a pile of scripts, about 400 scripts on a shelf. And they wanted me to like read them all that night. And I was like, this is, you know, I don't think this could be any worse. There were agents that were screaming at their assistants, throwing staple guns at them. And I was just like, oh my God, I don't want to be here at all. The second day I woke up, I had to like pull myself into the office, and I get a call after lunch from one of Ed's assistants, who says, Mr. Lamato wants to see you in his office. And I'm thinking, all right, I already screwed something up. I'm going to get fired. Fine with me. And Ed had this great big office, and he sat behind this massive desk. He's now deceased, but he was sort of he's exactly what you would imagine a classy agent to be. And true story now, he says to me, you read a script yesterday from Mel Gibson, and I wanted to discuss it with you and with Mel. And this chair spins around, and there's Mel Gibson. He was in this massive chair, and I couldn't see him. Literally, I did not know he was in the room. And so Mel spins around, and I spend the next 45 minutes talking about the script with Mel Gibson, who at that time was the world's biggest movie star. And so I left the office, and I said, wow, that was kind of cool. And, 17 years later. So a very long story to a very short question. But I really never thought that I would be there for more than a year. But it's a very easy job. I can do it in my sleep. It's a lot of hours. It's really a lot of hours. I'm usually up at 4:30 every morning. That's really when I start my day. I sleep like 3 hours. But it's fun. Look, I'm not going to say it's rewarding. I'm not curing cancer, but I have a lot of fun, and even as a child, I wanted to be in the movie industry, and so this is, it's kind of a cool, offbeat thing to do, and it employs what it is that I know, what it is that I studied. So it's really sort of the best of all worlds, for me at least. So that's why I got it.
And you produce, so I mean, you got a question over here?
What can you tell
And
us
this is
about...
Aaron.
Yeah, Aaron. My name is Aaron.
Hey, Aaron.
Hi. What can you tell us about the amount of women that you work with, or is there a lot of women in your agency that have high up comfortable positions, or is it mostly men?
It's still a boys' club. it's still a boys' club overall, which is really a shame. You know, if you go back and look at the beginning of the film industry, there were probably more powerful women than there were men, or at least at least equal. There were many, many filmmakers. You know, Alice Guy from Paris. There was Lois Weber, Frances Marion, Mary Pickford. You know, we can go on and on and on and on. I think really what happened, just a sort of brief little bit of history, is that in the beginning, before anybody really knew what film was going to be, before it was really profitable, everybody was involved. But when somebody realized, wow, there's a lot of money to be made in film, women got booted out because ultimately the place of women wasn't in business. When film was a hobby, great. But when it really became serious, serious business, women found themselves sidelined by men. And I don't think women have ever really recovered from that. It's been a very, very slow progression. We've only had one woman in the history of the Film Academy to win the Academy Award for Best Director. You will, however, find more women on my side of the business than you probably will in high-ranking filmmaking positions. There are a lot of powerful women at my agency, and obviously there are a lot of powerful actresses. And what we're seeing is that we're seeing these actresses use their clout and use their power. Somebody like Angelina Jolie, as an example, to then become a filmmaker herself. And, you know, whether you respect her filmmaking abilities or not, she's still helping to pave the way. Anna DuVernay, who directed Selma, I think was really slighted this year. It was really one of the best movies that I saw this year, and I think she did a great job as director and did not get a nomination. You know, I'm not saying that there's a bias there. I mean, there were a lot of great directors that weren't nominated, but her film was, I think, particularly good, and it was probably nominated for Best Picture. In fact, I'm pretty sure it was.
Yeah, it was.
So there are, on my side of the business, as an executive, there are many, many, many positions for women. Many positions for women. And then a lot of those women will eventually move into producing as well. But in terms of actual sort of, you know, getting your hands dirty out, you know, in the field, it's harder to find women. Women have to work harder than men do in the business. Unfortunately, but that's just the reality.
And there are places, I mean, you know, obviously casting and, I mean, the traditional places like wardrobe and makeup and hair and things like that. But there are more and more agents and managers and PR people who are producing women producers.
Yeah, and you know,
directors. I mean,
ultimately, it comes down to, are you telling stories that people want to experience? I think that the main reason why people don't make it in the business is because they tell stories that the majority of the people are not going to be interested in. This is it's an art of mass market, because a piece of work can cost $100 million. It's not like, you know, painting. You know, it's not like painting. Painting's not going to cost you $100 million. You know, it's going to cost you a couple of dollars in material, but it's not going to cost you $100 million to actually create that. So there's sort of a practical side to filmmaking, and if your vision doesn't line up with sort of who's going to the movies today, then that becomes a problem. And I think that you look at films today, and the most popular films, the films that are really making money, are geared toward young men. And if you're a woman, your sensibility is not necessarily geared toward young men, then that means it's going to be a little bit harder for you to tell your stories to a mass audience. You might have to make smaller movies and then build that way. It'll be interesting to see what happens with the career of Anna DuVernay. You know, she started, I think it was only like her second film, I think. You know, she made like a smaller film, and now she got this film, and then let's see how she's able to transition this. And she's also African American, so, you know, it's even that much harder. So, yeah, it's a shame, but you know, if you're not white male, you got to work your ass off. You got to work that much harder in this business, because there may not be as many opportunities for you. Look, you know, even looking at roles for somebody like Denzel, one of the biggest movie stars in the world, right now, historical pieces are very popular. So there are a lot of scripts that I read, but they're not written for black actors. You know, Denzel Washington can't play Abraham Lincoln. I mean, he can play Abraham Lincoln, and he could probably do it a lot better than a lot of other actors. But the truth is that people are going to say, well, Abraham Lincoln wasn't black. You know, people have a hard time looking past that. You know, maybe one day we will sort of get to the point where any actor, regardless of skin or sex in a movie, can play any role. You know, women have played Hamlet on stage. That's not unusual. So I don't know, but it's definitely it's a tough business in general, and then it's a tougher business if you fall into any sort of minority class.
I wanted to follow up with something that you said, and then again go back to the questions. You know, a lot of people want to make film because they want to make film, and other people want to make film and be part of a commercial industry. And the difference between art house and commercial, I liken it to this analogy that if you're a hunter, you've got to go where the animals are if you want to, you know, and so many filmmakers go, well, I'm just going to sit here and wait for the animals to come by, and if they like me, then they'll all gather, and it doesn't seem to happen as much that way. But having said that, you still want to have your own unique vision. I mean, you're not just being a crash commercialist, but your goal is to, as you said, have appeal to as many people as make it financially successful for you.
Yeah. Look, I think that, as we said before, that the business is starting to come to you in some ways because of the internet. You can go out and make a movie and put it online. You know, I think about The Collection is a horror movie that I produced. It didn't do very. It's a bad movie, but it didn't. It's not good. You know, the first one has a lot more sadistic charm, I think. The second one, you know, we tried to make it bigger, but at any rate, I remember that the sort of marketing campaign for it just seemed so disastrous, and you know, a lot of money was put into it. And then a couple of months later, the actress who starred in the movie did this spoof video.
Oh, right.
Directed by a USC film student, spoofing Anne Hathaway's performance in Les Miserables. And
brilliant.
Got like 1 billion hits. She got more play off of that. She was was interviewed by Katie Couric. I mean, she was on every talk show. She was in every magazine. And you look at the power of that little thing. Launched this massive publicity campaign for this actress, which she didn't have to pay for. Everything came to her. And I was thinking, my God, you know, we paid all that money and put all that effort into a publicity campaign that didn't really pay off. And although the movie's done actually quite well now, but still, you can see the power of, you know, an iPhone and the internet. It's sort of David versus Goliath in many ways, and so it can come to you.
That's excellent.
If you've got the right stuff. And look, you don't have to be a Hollywood filmmaker. You don't have to make a film that a billion people are going to see. You don't have to be James Cameron if you don't want to be James Cameron. But you also have to understand that it's a business. And if you want to make a movie that stars all your friends, that's great. But that doesn't mean that a distributor is going to want to invest the money to distribute your film around the world. Because nobody knows who your friends are, and nobody's going to want to see a movie with your friends in it, except maybe you and your friends. And that's a reality of the business, because it's like you can't necessarily have your cake and eat it too. You can't expect a billion people to see your movie if there isn't anything in the movie that would attract a billion people. So it's a crapshoot. It doesn't mean that you can't make some little tiny movie that then goes on to do incredible business. You think of that My Big Fat Greek Wedding that was made for a small amount of money and you know, did amazing business. Amazing business. And then it spawned like a TV series. That movie probably made Tom Hanks, you know, the majority of his wealth. He was a producer on that. So you never know how anything's going to play out. Which is why I think first and foremost you have to be true to who you are as the artist. If, you know, you don't ever want to try to put a square peg in a round hole. If you're not James Cameron, if you're more John Sayles, then be John Sayles. And then you'll just have to sort of accept whatever the consequences of being John Sayles means. But I think if you're not being true to who you are as an artist, then you won't be successful anyway. So somebody like Christopher Nolan, I think, is a very good example of somebody who sort of has this James Cameron sensibility, but also has these sort of independent roots. And he's been able to find a way to combine both, where a lot of his films are often adored by both critics and audiences. He's sort of that rare example, where somebody like James Cameron, his films often appeal to audiences, but maybe not so much critics. And that's not completely true, because some of his films have done quite well with critics, while others haven't. So it's just about you finding out who you are as an artist and your voice. And this is your time now, as a student. This is your time to figure those things out, you know, who you are.
Cool. We've got about 18 minutes or so left on the outside. So we got a question over here from...
Hi, Chris. This is Kevin.
Hey, Kevin.
Just wondering what advice you would give to writers starting out, and should they, you know, make the move out to California, or build something locally?
You know, I don't think you need to move to California right away. I think 25 years ago, when I moved out to California, you needed to move to California. Again, because there was no way to communicate with anybody out here. There just wasn't. Like, you know, here we are now, right? Here now we're all doing this. So any of you in the future could drop an email and say, hey, you know, we met in Rex's class via Skype. I couldn't do that 26 years ago. I didn't meet anybody, because there was no Skype. So now you're at a great advantage in being able to network in ways that people 25 years ago couldn't network. So we had no choice but to come to California. There was no choice. The funny thing about writers coming to California is that most writers are introverts. They spend all day in a room by themselves writing. They're not so much party people. So what do? They make a big deal about moving to California, and then they spend their whole day writing inside a room by themselves, and then they never meet anybody. Well, you could have done that in Wisconsin. You don't need to come out here to do that. So if you are going to come out here, then you have to be true to why you're coming out, which is to network and you know, get your ass out there and start meeting people. But like I said, you can do that in other ways now. You want to have a few scripts under your belt. There's different reasons for that. The biggest reason for that is that by having a few scripts under your belt, it means that you have a little bit of experience as a writer. Can you sell the very first script that you write and become a massive Hollywood success with one script? Absolutely. But the odds of that are slim to none. What usually happens is that you write a script, and it's a good script. People say, wow, I really like the script. I can't sell it because there's no market for it, but I like the script. It shows that you have talent, that you're a good writer, that you understand drama, you understand cinema. What else do you have? And then you can give them that second script or that third script. If you don't have that second or third script, well, it's not the end of the world. You'll just go off and write it, but you'll have lost some momentum. Because now here was somebody who is interested in you and wants to see what else you have, and you don't have anything at that time. So it's good to have more than one project. Again, one of my former students was a kid named Josh Schwartz. He wrote one script when he was at USC. He sold it for $1.75 million. And then he went on to create The OC, which was a massive TV show. He's got Gossip Girl, Heart of Dixie, Chuck. I mean, he's worth probably $100 million now. And he was at the time the youngest showrunner, and remains still the youngest showrunner in television history because of one script that he sold that launched his career. So those stories exist, but winning the Powerball lottery stories also exist. You know, and you can go out and buy that ticket every week and never win. Which is why you need to keep your day job and play the lottery. And so, yeah, so you really want to sort of hedge all your bets. You want to be able to have as much in your arsenal as you can. Maybe having won a prestigious screenwriting contest. Again, you really want to, before coming out here, be prepared. At the same time, if you're young, you have nothing to hold you down, come on out. It's a great place to live. You know, it's beautiful. 85 today. Just remember, though, that the rents are high. The rents out here are high.
Gas is expensive.
Gas is expensive. In fact...
and you drive a lot.
You do drive a lot, so you kind of need a car. I actually walk to work because I live and work in Beverly Hills. And I think maybe it's like a little bit of my old New York mentality. But most people are not as lucky to sort of live where they work. Keep in mind, too, that sort of like the rents are higher in New York City than they are here, but people earn more money in New York than they do in LA. So the rents here are high in comparison to what people earn. So, like, you know, you come out here, you know, when I first moved out here, I was making $7.50 an hour. When I first moved out here, the very first job I had to take was making. When I was in New York, I was making $47.50 an hour in 1988. I moved out here. I took a $40 an hour pay cut.
Wow.
Because, you know, that's what you do when you want to be a star. So, you know, these are the things that you have to be prepared for.
Awesome. We've got about 12 minutes on the outside. I want to make sure that somebody who hasn't asked a question can ask a question if they do want to, Otherwise, is that you?
Yeah. Hi, Nick.
So we've got about 3 questions that we can answer if we have time.
Well, I got time.
No, well, we'll have to get out of the room sometime soon, but thanks.
I don't have to get out of my room.
No, stay there, relax. We'll all be over for tea.
All right.
So I was wondering.
And
about,
this is
Nick. Yeah. I was wondering about your TV special, the Inside Pitch, the writing workshop that you did. I was just wondering, like, what are some of the techniques that you talked about on that?
Well, you know, that's sort of an odd thing, because that was born from a workshop that I did out here. It was just a free workshop that I gave at the Beverly Hills Library. And we eventually got, kicked out of there, and some guy kind of warehouse downtown LA after reading a big LA Times article about the workshop. Said, why don't you come on down here and do it? And basically what it was writers pitched to me, and I gave them feedback. It was sort of like American Idol or Antique Roadshow, where people would pitch their ideas, and then I would give them feedback. Because, I sort of felt like the idea of just lecturing to people without it being interactive was not helpful. Because I could tell you all of the platitudes of screenwriting and pitching, but I'd rather hear your idea, and then I can tell you what works or doesn't work about your performance, and what works or doesn't work about your actual story. And so it got picked up. So some local producer saw it, the workshop, and said, hey, I want to do that for a TV show out here. So I sort of got wrangled into it. It isn't something that I really wanted to do, but I got wrangled into it. I actually got nominated for an Emmy Award out here for it, oddly enough. And today, I still do once a month, I do a podcast where writers call in and pitch to me, and I give them feedback. And so it's sort of the same thing. So really, the advice on that show, it's really more experiential. It's really more about you watching writers pitch and seeing for yourself what works and what doesn't work, and then hearing and seeing if your opinions line up with the opinions of me and my co-host, who at that time worked for Jerry Bruckheimer. So that's sort of what that show is about. I think the biggest mistake that people make when they pitch is they go off on tangents, they don't stay focused, and they tell too much. They tell too much. They talk so much that it's hard for somebody to be able to track the story. I think with pitching, the best thing you can always do is start small. The analogy that I always give is it's sort of like nesting dolls, but in reverse. You know those dolls where you have a big doll and you open it up and there's another one inside. You open up that one and there's another inside. But it's sort of the opposite, where you start with a small box and you make a small presentation, and then as the pitch goes on, you open up a bigger box and a bigger box and a bigger box. But to start with the biggest box is very difficult to maintain. It's hard for you to be able to maintain that kind of pitch, and it's hard for somebody like me to be able to digest all the information that you're throwing at me. So too much information can be bad.
Cool, very cool. All right, next, Brian.
I'm a YouTuber in kind of like a modest YouTube community, and right now there's a lot of doom and gloom in it because a lot of people view the YouTube slowly becoming I guess Hollywoodized, and they're worried about being edged out of their own thing. And while I think that that's kind of alarmist, a lot of people point towards towards YouTubers getting agents and crews and stuff like that as signs that this is slowly becoming more and more structured. How structured do you think YouTube is going to get in the future? Do you think it's going to go all the way to being something that's almost impossible to be breaking through?
I think that if YouTube had its way, it would be HBO. So I think that they'll always keep a portion of it open to people coming in, because that's how they're going to find talent. That's how they're going to get access to talent. I mean, what a brilliant thing to do, to provide a route of distribution for people to come in and then pluck from that. It's great. But yeah, I mean, YouTube wants to be able to make money. And they want to do it in any way possible. And if they can get a piece of the action in the long run, they will. So, yes, I believe it's just the beginning, that it will become more structured. But I also believe there'll always be a portion of it that will remain sort of the Wild West.
Cool. Steve?
your reading we had, you talked about logline. When you talked about external versus internal, using internal words like decides, realize, and learns, those should be avoided. What external words do you think would work best for a writer to use in their logline?
External word?
Yeah, external word.
External word. Well, you know, the one that I always use in my logline is struggles. That's always the word that I use. Because the reason that I like that word is because I think it also does connote a little bit of internal, but it also provides sort of a scope. You know, struggling seems like it's a word that sort of alludes to something that lasts for a while. Like a decision is momentary also. That's the other reason why I don't like the word, because when somebody says they have to decide, it doesn't sound like it's something that can be carried for a 2-hour movie. It sounds like a person makes a decision, you know? It's really about the struggle, because it's about the struggle to solve the problem. So that's always my favorite word. That's the word that I use constantly. If you know, you read 98% of my log lines, they'll use that word. Because I think it's appropriate. Because it can work for a small movie, like, you know, a young girl struggles to win a beauty pageant, or it can be a big word, like a scientist struggles to save the world. So, you know, it sort of covers a lot of ground, and it works with all sorts of log lines. So that's the word that I like the most. And yeah, but it's a good point that the words like learns or decides. If you see that your log line commands the word decides or learns, then you need to look back at your story and say, wow, maybe my story is more internal than external. Maybe I haven't written the best movie. Maybe I've written a novel. I tell people all the time, just because you've written a screenplay doesn't mean you've written a screenplay. You know, you might hand me 120 pages in screenplay format, but that doesn't mean it's a screenplay. So, and I read a lot of screenplays that are not screenplays. So I suggest always write the log line first. Don't write the log line last. Write it first before you even write the script. Now it can change through the course. You're not married to that log line, but at least you'll know that you have a concept that's dramatic and cinematic, rather than spending 8 months on a screenplay and then realizing that you can't write a log line that's dramatic and cinematic because your screenplay isn't dramatic and cinematic.
Excellent, excellent. Well, I think that's about it for questions. You know, I got to say I really enjoyed this, Chris. I can sit and listen to you forever, and
that's too bad for you.
I don't have much of a life, right?
You need to get a life.
Yeah, but I could, and I really do appreciate this, and I think that how's it been for you guys? Good time, value. So we all want to say thank you very, very much, and I'll call you from the car later just to debrief. But I really do appreciate this, and thank you.
Good luck, everybody.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks,
and you may get emails from some of these characters.
All right.
All right.
Try not to blow them off.
All right. Thank you, sir.
All right. See ya.
Awesome. Bye now. All right. So, how was that for you?